The Bureau of Statistics brings out every 5 years projections of the urban and national populations that I don't think they actually get enough coverage. The 2023 release came out in October. Projected growth, this is on the medium and high projections, of the capital cities are between 5.2 and 7.6 million over the next 25 years. To put that in context, that's about the same or more than what we had in the last 20 years. So it's at least a 30% increase. Now, that's principally coming from increased and relatively high continued levels of net international migration. So what's happened in the last 2 years is that these projections are probably now tracking more along the high level than the medium level. So we're probably going to get closer to 7 to 8 million more people in the next 25 years. So in context, we're on track to add another Sydney or a Melbourne plus a Canberra. And we expect that the housing demands plus the infrastructure demands, the other stuff that goes with it, both the hard infrastructure, the public infrastructure, is probably going to put more additional pressure on the urban forest. So there's going to be this tension between housing enough people and making sure the urban forest remains in place. And a paper that came out yesterday, I think, adds to that tension. It's from the New South Wales Productivity and Equality Commission. I don't know if any of you be aware of it. 96-page report on how they're going to increase the number of homes being built in Sydney from around 2,000 a month to 6,000 a month to meet their targets, which is about 600,000 new homes in the next 5 years. Now, I read through that report this morning. It runs about 96 pages, so I scanned it quickly. There is not one mention in there of the urban forest, trees, greenness. And the outcome is likely to be a significant increase in medium to high density housing. Overall, the other issue is that the population over 65 is going to expand very strongly. So that's going to more than double in the next 20 years. Most of you here, apart from some, will go into that area. So that'll more than double. The number of people over 85 is going to treble to almost 700,000. And I also have the view that the changes to the population are meaning that people are actually not driving into the cities and back out again, they're buzzing around in their suburbs. So the role of the urban forest in providing benefits to human health and well-being, and we talk a lot about that in our paper, is the subject of increasing research. And an important issue, I think, for policymakers and managers is how we manage this dichotomy between this required strong growth in the urban populations and the well-being needs of an ageing population.
Urbanisation processes are very much impacting on our tree cover in urban areas. And, you know, two different processes of urban change. On the left, we can see a small house and a large garden being replaced by a large house and a small garden. And on the right, we can see densification processes. We need more houses. We're facing a housing crisis, and yet this is creating suburbs that we know from previous presentations are going to be less livable than what our parents and grandparents had. I think when most people hear the word policy, they assume it's regulations. You have to do this and you have to do it in this way, in this place, at this time. But policy is more than just regulation. Some typologies or framings of policy talk about 4 different types of policy mechanisms: regulations, government provision and demonstration, information and community engagement, and incentives, awards and grants. So we know that the life and death of trees spans across the stages of urbanisation, during development, across the built environment's life stages, during redevelopment. We need policy that considers and addresses all those points of urbanisation. We need to think about residential, commercial and industrial contexts, and we saw a pie chart of this morning that showed that commercial land is not pulling its weight in terms of tree canopy cover. And we need to be planning for a multifunctional connected network that spans public and private land. This is my big picture stuff. We need to combine policies, planning schemes, local laws, incentives. We need to set and enforce minimum standards. We need to encourage and incentivise positive behaviour. We need to engage community, and we need to foster a sense of collective stewardship, because indeed the livability, sustainability, thrivability of our urban areas depends on that collective stewardship. And effective policymakers, so those of you who are writing the policy and achieving its adoption through political processes, effective policymakers need to bring together good evidence and effective narratives. Stories of a better world. That line comes from Paul Kearney, who's a UK-based policy academic, and he's written some great papers on policy processes, one of which, 3 Habits of Successful Policy Entrepreneurs. He talks about effective policymakers are able to tell stories of a better world. So to do that, let's foster connections with nature and connections with place and stewardship of trees.